welcome to our exploration. We're going to be taking these foundational texts and really trying to wrestle them into something practical for daily life.
And today we're shifting back into one of the long-form essays.
Which is so important. They really let you slow down, kind of catch your breath.
And see the big picture. They frame the whole sequence of lessons that are coming up.
So today's focus is the essay, What is the Ego?
It's one of the most, direct and necessary readings in all of the material. Really just confronts you with the definition of the very structure we're all working so hard to dismantle.
Right. It tells you straight up, the ego is a false identity. It's stark.
Mm-hmm. Because the text immediately throws that image up against the unwavering, perfect peace of the Son of God, your true identity, the one that knows nothing about conflict.
So our mission today is to really get into that contrast. We'll look at the ego's insanity, its mechanisms,
and the immense cost of holding on to this false self.
Yeah.
But crucially, we're going to define forgiveness as the practical, immediate tool for shifting your focus away from the ego's altar and just coming back to peace.
Let's start by reading the essay together. It sets such a powerful tone for everything we're about to discuss.
What is the ego? The ego is idolatry, the sign of limited and separated self, born in a body, doomed to suffer and to end its life in death. It is the will that sees the will of God as enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The ego is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful, life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true.
The ego is insane. In fear, it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from all, in separation from the infinite. In its insanity, it thinks it has become a victor over God himself. And in its terrible autonomy, it sees the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them.
The Son of God is egoless. What can he know of madness and the death of God when he abides in him? What can he know of sorrow and of suffering when he lives in eternal joy? What can he know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt, of hatred and attack, when all there is surrounding him is everlasting peace, forever conflict-free and undisturbed in deepest silence and tranquility?
To know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, and its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. In suffering, the price for faith in it is so immense that crucifixion of the Son of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die.
Yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light, the altar to illusions to the shrine of life itself? And peace will be restored forever to the holy minds which God created as his Son, his dwelling place, his joy, his love, completely one with him.
That is just, it's so dense, so high impact. The lessons before this, they were showing us our little reactive habits.
Right, the small stuff.
The snappy replies, the quick defensiveness, that instant shot of anxiety. And then this essay comes along and just holds up a giant mirror.
And it forces you to look at the massive mindset behind all those little reactions. It goes right to the core principle that the ego is a false identity. It's constructed on this foundational belief that we somehow successfully separate it from the infinite.
And everything else, all the pain, the conflict, the stress we feel.
It's just a ripple effect. It's just a consequence of living out that one impossible decision as if it were true.
What strikes me is that even though the language is so strong, insanity, crucifixion, the world the ego creates is so profoundly familiar.
Which actually makes the essay much more relatable than it first seems.
Exactly. We can zoom right in on a tiny everyday moment to see this in action.
Think about that feeling of bracing yourself, that physical and mental tightening right before you open an email from your boss.
Or a message from a family member and the subject line is ambiguous.
Yes. And what happens in your body?
Your body is tight and your mind is already filling in the blanks. You're anticipating the threat before you even have evidence.
The second you let external information dictate your internal reality, you've built the ego's foundation. It sees danger everywhere.
And this connects directly to that opening line. The ego as idolatry.
Idolatry is simply placing your identity, your value, or your worth in anything outside of God.
It's the insidious modern habit of constantly seeking external validation. I think of times, especially when I was younger, constantly monitoring the reactions of people I admired. I'd watch the look on their face when I said something. And if they paused, or if their reply was a little cursed,
Instant self-judgment.
total self-judgment. I took their lack of immediate validation as proof that I was inadequate or unprepared. I was basically letting them decide my worth.
And that is textbook egoic idolatry. It's believing that someone else, a person, a job, a bank account, can confirm something about you that is actually inherent and unchanging, something only the true self can hold.
What's so wild is how our culture just loves this. You hear parents who are proud that their children idolize them. You see celebrity worship as this institutionalized thing.
And everyone seems to think it's fine until it leads to a physical breakdown or an emotional collapse.
Which is the only possible outcome when you build your identity on something that's constantly shifting.
The Course is just pointing out that the moment you treat anything external as having the power to confirm or deny your value, you've made an idol. You've bowed down to the ego's system.
And right after that, the essay makes this bold statement. The ego is insane. We have to be really careful here to keep this grounded.
Yes, absolutely. It's critical to clarify that the Course's use of insanity isn't dismissing real psychological causes for behavior. It's not a substitute for therapy.
Right. If you habitually scan a room for danger, that might be because you grew up in a really unpredictable environment.
Of course. If you anticipate conflict, you're responding to past conditioning.
So the Course isn't trying to replace that healing process.
Not at all. It's speaking to the core metaphysical idea underneath all those experiences.
In Course terms, what is insanity?
It's the belief that we actually managed to separate from the infinite, and then living as if that belief were objective truth.
But that's literally impossible. You can't separate from all.
Exactly. But once you choose to believe it, you start interpreting everything through that lens of separation.
And the consequences are what the text describes.
The belief in separation, that core insanity, it's driving the system to find threat and prepare for attack.
It's acting in its terrible autonomy, believing it has become a victor over God. That's a line that can be really overwhelming for people.
Let's break that down. Why does the ego need to see God's will as destroyed?
Well, what is the will of God?
Perfect, unified love, peace. So if the ego is going to exist as a separate, unique thing,
It can only prove its own existence by showing that the alternative unity and peace is false. Separation has to mean the destruction of unity.
it built on opposition. If God's will is creation, the ego's will has to be death. If God's will is love, the ego has to prove that strength is weak and love is fearful.
So the very fact that we experience fear and weakness is, to the ego, the proof that its impossible act of separation actually worked.
And this leads right into the imagery of punishment and fear. The essay says the ego dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams. This is a perfect description of projection. The figures in the ego's dreams are your own guilt projected outward. The ego has to see threat everywhere because it's built on the guilt of believing you shattered unity.
And to avoid facing that terrifying internal guilt.
It throws it onto the world. It creates enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them.
That one dynamic is the root of all conflict, isn't it? Attack is always framed as self-defense.
Always. If I feel attacked by you, even in a small way, the ego insists I have to attack back or defend myself, which just confirms the whole belief system.
The ego can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined one.
To the ego, every perceived slight is an existential threat. And this whole exhaustive description then brings us to this profound, absolute contrast, the egoless reality.
Right, the next section, which defines the Son of God as egoless. And the list of what this identity does not know is extensive. No madness, no sorrow, no fear, guilt, hatred, or attack.
This is a radical redefinition of who you are. When we talk about egolessness, we're not talking about some perfected mystical human. It's about a state of being that lives from truth instead of fear. It's freedom from the need to be on guard all the time. It's the difference between walking into a challenging meeting already scanning the room for who might undermine you
Versus walking in without that agenda, just being present.
It's sitting with someone you love without rehearsing what you're going to say next, just trusting that the right words will come.
It's waking up in the morning without that subtle, nagging pressure to prove your worth today, to achieve something to justify your existence.
It's a natural ease. It comes from remembering your identity instead of spending every single moment constructing and defending a false one.
Remembering identity instead of constructing one, that's the whole key right there.
The ego is all construction, all effort, all maintenance. Egolessness is just relaxing into what's already true. That deepest silence and tranquility the essay talks about.
And then the essay brings us back to the emotional consequences of maintaining the ego, the fear, guilt, hatred, attack. This is our daily experience.
Let's ground them. How does guilt actually show up for you?
Physically, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's that knot in the stomach or the tension you carry in your jaw all day for no apparent reason.
That physical tension is your body carrying the weight of the false belief that you're fundamentally flawed.
What about punishment?
Punishment can be really subtle. It can look like self-sabotage or just constantly expecting the other shoe to drop. You know, the feeling that the day is bound to fall apart.
Because if the ego is built on guilt, it demands punishment.
And we often deliver that punishment to ourselves by just living in a state of anxious anticipation.
And hatred. That's not always overt rage.
No, often it's a flash of intense irritation at something tiny. A driver cuts you off, a coworker uses a phrase you hate.
And there's this disproportionate flash of anger.
That's a projection of your own internal hostility. And suffering. Suffering is carrying the weight of an interaction long after it's over.
A conversation from last week, a mistake from months ago.
And we keep carrying it because the ego tells us we have to pay for our perceived sins. These are all so familiar if you're practicing honestly.
And this leads us to the most dramatic part of the essay, the part about the immense cost of the ego. It says, the crucifixion of the Son of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow.
The language is intense. What does it mean that the Son of God is crucified daily?
The Son of God is our true, egoless identity of perfect peace. So crucifixion is the act of agonizingly sacrificing that peace.
And the ego's shrine, its whole belief system, demands that sacrifice over and over.
So every moment you choose fear over peace, every moment you choose defense over openness.
You're performing that crucifixion. You are sacrificing your inner peace at the altar of separation.
And the blood must flow. What does that represent?
That's the vitality, the joy, the energy that gets drained from you just to maintain the ego structure. Keeping that belief in a separate self alive requires a huge amount of energy.
That energy drain is the blood flowing before its altar.
And his followers are sickly because the system demands exhaustion, fear, and chronic anxiety. You can't be truly whole or healthy if you believe you're separate and have to fight for your survival 24/7.
So the path of the ego is, at its core, self-destructive, even when it's promising you safety or success.
The essay really emphasizes the sheer volume of stuff we've built to maintain this. It says, to know reality, you have to reject all of it. Its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, and its beliefs.
Its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation.
That's almost everything we think defines us. Our career plans, our relationship strategies, our political views.
The ego has a plan for salvation in every single one of those areas. And they're all based on being separate and needing to acquire something to be safe.
When you look at the scale of that, of rejecting all of those structures, it can feel impossible. How can one person dismantle a system that huge?
And that's the beauty of the turning point in the essay, the contrast between the massive, complex problem of the ego
and the breathtaking simplicity of the solution. The whole essay pivots on one line. Yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light?
One lily. Not 100 years of hard work, not mastering some complex doctrine.
One moment. The image of the lily suggests something so simple, pure, and fast. Forgiveness, in this context, is not a painful moral exercise.
It's a practical, immediate mechanism
for interrupting that huge, destructive buildup of the ego's reaction.
How does forgiveness act like a lily?
You feel a reaction building, the irritation at the coworker, the anxiety before the email. You can feel your system gearing up.
The old story, the damaging narrative. is forming in your mind, ready to justify fear or attack.
The ego is demanding that you project the memory of past pain onto this new, innocent moment.
And forgiveness is the pause.
It's the pause that breaks that chain. When you stop and you just get interested in the reaction and you release the meaning you were about to place on that moment, the whole reaction just loses its energy.
It's refusing to stuff this new moment into an old, painful story.
And it's not about excusing what someone else may or may not have done. It's about choosing not to use their behavior, real or imagined, as proof that your identity is under attack.
It's letting the moment stand on its own, clean and free of the past.
Exactly. And then the altar to illusions, the ego's shrine, becomes the shrine of life itself because the sacrifice, the crucifixion of your peace is refused.
The light is restored instantly because the darkness was only ever a belief in an illusion.
And that shift is immediate because reality, the Son of God's egoless peace, never actually went anywhere. The ego is just a belief system laid on top of it.
You remove the belief through forgiveness, and the reality underneath is right there. It was there all along.
Which is why the essay concludes with that promise that peace will be restored. The restoration is certain because the peace was never truly lost. It was just momentarily denied.
The power of forgiveness is how pervasive it is. It works everywhere.
It does. It works in the middle of a heated conversation when you can feel that urge to attack rising. If you can just pause for a breath and let go of needing to be right.
The entire energy of the interaction changes.
It works when you're alone with your thoughts, with that inner critic telling you you're not enough, you're behind. Forgiveness there is just letting those thoughts pass without giving them the authority of truth.
Or when you wake up with that low-grade dread from the day before, a resentment, a worry.
You just apply the lily. I'm not carrying this into this moment. I forgive this feeling for what I thought it meant about me.
It's a clean line back to the truth. It just pulls you out of the problem the ego created.
Which only ever needed a simple solution.
So this brings us to practical application. How do we carry these ideas into the next set of lessons? It's important to remember that by this stage, you start to recognize the ego's voice much faster.
Much faster. But that doesn't mean it goes silent.
Not at all.
No, it just means your reaction time gets better. The ego is very persistent. Some days you only catch the reaction after it's already happened.
Which can be frustrating.
Very. Other times you notice it while you're right in the middle of it. And on those really powerful days, you feel the pause right before the old habit takes over.
The crucial thing is that this is a daily practice. It's not a scoreboard. It's not a hierarchy of achievement. The ego loves to measure progress.
Oh, it loves it. How well did I forgive today? Was I egoless enough? The second you start doing that, the ego has just co-opted the whole process to block the shift.
The goal isn't perfection. It's just willingness, honesty in this moment right now.
So as we head into the next lessons, we can approach them with 4 specific tips.
First, cultivate curiosity.
This is the direct antidote to the ego's self-judgment. Instead of, why am I still doing this? You ask, that's interesting. What meaning did I just place on that?
It disarms shame. When you feel a flash of anger, instead of beating yourself up, you get curious. What am I afraid of losing here? What identity am I defending?
Curiosity acknowledges the reaction without validating it as truth.
Second, practice openness without fear.
The ego wants you to believe that if you look too closely at its workings, your resentments, your anxieties, you'll find something horrible and damning about yourself.
But the truth is the opposite. The text says the ego is insanity. When you look at it openly, you just see it's a mistaken thought system. It's not who you are.
The fear of seeing the ego is so much worse than the ego itself.
Third tip, question meaning.
The ego's entire power comes from the meaning we assign to external events. We have to build the habit of pausing and questioning that meaning.
So if someone ignores your idea in a meeting, the ego's immediate meaning is, I'm irrelevant.
And the practice is to ask, is that the only possible interpretation? Is it actually true that my worth depends on their agreement?
You introduce doubt into the ego story, and it starts to lose its grip.
The ego needs external reality to confirm its inner belief in guilt. Questioning meaning is the tool that says, I don't know what this means, and I'm willing for it to mean peace instead.
And finally, the fourth tip, practice pausing.
This is the physical, mental application of the lily of forgiveness. Take an active interest in creating a pause before the old habit takes over.
The difference between a peaceful day and a day full of conflict often comes down to that tiny space between stimulus and reaction.
If you hear something you don't like, stop. Wait 3 seconds before you respond. That intentional pause is the space where peace can be restored.
It's the moment of choice. It's where you prevent the daily crucifixion of peace that the ego demands.
It's not about stopping the feeling from arising. It's about stopping the momentum, stopping the decision to follow that feeling into conflict.
When we bring this kind of mindset to the next lessons, curiosity, openness, questioning meaning, and the pause, they become so much more functional.
We're not aiming for perfection. We're just aiming for consistent willingness.
This exploration has, I think, served its purpose. It's given us the vital context. The ego is a complex defense system built on separation.
But the solution, forgiveness, is brilliantly simple, and it's available right now.
The essay makes it clear that the scale of the ego's illusion is huge.
But the price of keeping it going is far too high for us to keep paying.
The way out isn't complicated. It's one honest moment of forgiveness, one refusal to crucify peace. And that one moment changes everything around it. This is the practice we carry forward.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration today.
If you want to connect with us about how these lessons are showing up in your own life, you can email us. The address is acim@theworldharmonyproject.org, or find us on TikTok at The World Harmony Project.
We look forward to continuing this work with you tomorrow. And remember, the choice between constructing an identity out of separation or remembering the identity of natural ease, it's always available right now.
We'll see you next time for Lesson 331.